Okay, so we're taking another step in this set of sermons called Formed. We just have another step or two to take. We're about to come to an end in this set of sermons, but we have been here over the last few months exploring this idea of formation, spiritual formation, because we want formed hearts, right? We want hearts that reflect Jesus' heart reflexively. We all want that. So we've been exploring these themes and these issues together. And we've said over and over that to see our hearts formed, if we want hearts that reflect the heart of God reflexively, we need two things. We need grace and we need grit. We need both. Our hearts, first of all, have to see the person and promises of Jesus. That's grace. Our hearts do not change apart from the grace of God. And we need grit. We've said this again just over and over the last few weeks, that our hearts, they have to see the person and promises of Jesus, and then our hearts must be trained. They have to form habits. We have to train our hearts for godliness. And so over the last few months, we've been exploring together these habits that Christians have used over the centuries to see their hearts formed. And today I want to explore another one of those habits with you. It's the habit of friendship, or we might say even more particularly, the habit of gospel friendship. So let's start in Acts chapter 2. Acts chapter 2 is one of my favorite chapters in the Bible. Peter stands before this large Jewish crowd, right? They've assembled in Jerusalem. Crowd gathers. Peter preaches Jesus to them, and a mini revival breaks out. The text says their hearts were cut to the core, and they cry out collectively. This crowd cries out to Peter, "What must we do to be saved?" And Peter answers, "Here's what you need to do. You need to repent and be baptized." And on that day, 3,000 people were rescued by the risen Jesus. Just amazing. I would have loved to have been there on that day. Wouldn't that be just quite a picture to see? So you've got this huge moment in the life of the New Testament church. The New Testament church just explodes on that day. 3,000 people rescued by Jesus. And then immediately after that, they're rescued by Jesus. Then immediately after that, we get a behind-the-curtain glimpse at the life of the early church, the habits of the early church, the practices of the early church. You see this in Acts 2, verse 42. The text says, "And they," talking about all these people now, 3,000 of them assembled into a church, and they devoted themselves to the apostles' teaching and to fellowship and to the breaking of bread and to prayer. Now, we've explored a lot of these habits already. We've explored the habit of the Word, of engaging the Scriptures, of keeping our nose down in the Bible. That is foundational to your formation. So Bible reading, we've explored that one. We've explored the habit of prayer. We've explored the habit of gathering with the church, just like we're doing on a morning like this, and the importance of the Lord's Supper or the breaking of bread in those sort of gathered moments. But today I want to point your attention to that one word that we see in Acts 2:42. It's that word fellowship. That word fellowship. Now, that word fellowship comes from a Greek word, koinonia. And it's the first time that we see that Greek word show up in the New Testament. And that Greek word, koinonia, is translated a lot of different ways into English. So when it's brought from Greek to English, it shows up sometimes, like it does in this text, as fellowship. Other times it shows up in the English word partnership. This is Philippians 1, where Paul is applauding the partnership he has with the church in Philippi. So sometimes it's partnership. Other times it shows up with the word sharing, like we're sharing together. Maybe it's resources, those sorts of things. In other times it shows up, like it does later in this text, as the word common. Like they're sharing, or they have these things in common together, or holding these possessions in common. So when you're thinking about that word fellowship, I think it's helpful to ask, well, what are people who are in fellowship, what are they sharing? What do they hold in common? And I think this is the simplest way to answer that question. What do people in fellowship, what are they holding in common? They are holding the man and the mission in common. The man and the mission. They share the person of Jesus. They have a common salvation, right? They have been rescued by Jesus from their sin, from hell, from the wrath of God. They share that in common. And not only have they been saved from their sin, they have been saved to life with God. I mean, there couldn't be anything bigger or deeper to share with a person than that, right? So they're sharing a common salvation, but they're also sharing the purpose of Jesus, not just the person of Jesus, but the mission, the purpose of Jesus. They're giving their lives to see disciples made to the end of the earth, even at great cost, at the risk of their life. They're giving their life to see that mission go down. Disciple making to the ends of the earth. They're sharing the man and the mission. J.R. Tolkien, I think, picked a great word to call his 9 in Lord of the Rings. Remember, what are the 9 called? It's the what of the rings? The fellowship of the rings, right? Because they've got this life or death mission. They've got to figure out a way collectively. They're sharing this common mission to get that ring into Mount Doom, right? So you've got this idea of the fellowship of the rings. They're sharing this common mission together. That's fellowship. I love how one author puts it. He says, true fellowship is less like friends gathering to watch the Super Bowl and more like players on the field in blood, sweat, and tears, huddled in the backfield in preparation for the next down. Yes, that's true fellowship. You got a sharing, holding in common the man and the mission, the person of Jesus and the mission of Jesus. Now, that idea of fellowship, to be in fellowship with people, that can have a lot of different forms. So it could be a very big corporate form like we're doing this morning. This is an expression. What we're doing this morning is an expression of fellowship. It's the sort of the bigger versions of the expression of fellowship, the corporate versions. There's also very small personal expressions of fellowship, like 2 people gathered over coffee to share their hearts with one another. That's a smaller version of fellowship. But I think if you cut that idea of fellowship down to the core, here's a good way to think about what fellowship is. You could think of fellowship as gospel friendship. That's fellowship. It is gospel friendship. It's friendships that hold or share this in common together. The man, Jesus, and the mission, the purposes of Jesus. So that's fellowship. Then you've got this idea of devoted. They are devoted to fellowship. That word devoted can be translated as they're constant in, they're continuing steadfastly in. So this is not a spasm of fellowship or gospel friendship. No, this is a practice in their life. This is a habit in the early church's life. They are practicing. They're forming this habit around fellowship or gospel friendship. Now, here's where I want to spend the bulk of our time today. I want to ask the question, why is that? Why do we see this habit develop, this practice develop in the early church of fellowship or gospel friendship? Why is that? And I want to give you 2 answers to that question. Why is that? We're going to zoom out of this text and let the Bible address that question. Why do we see this habit, devoted to fellowship, show up in the New Testament church? Here's reason number 1. Reason number 1. Because we all need friends. That's why that habit develops, because we all need friends. It doesn't matter if you're 5 or 95, you need friends. The Bible makes this point from the jump. In Genesis 1 and 2, we meet there God. In the beginning, who? God, right? In the beginning, God. So we are introduced to the main subject, the main person in the Bible, God. And we learn really quickly that this God exists in triune friendship, right? He exists in a very unique way. God reveals himself in the scriptures to us as one God, and that one God exists in 3 persons, right? Triune friendship. And each of those 3 distinct persons that make up God are fully God. That's the God that we're introduced to in the Bible, a God who exists in triune friendship. And then we learn in Genesis 1 and 2 that we are made in the image of that communal God, that triune God, that God who exists in friendships. And you know what that makes you? A communal creature. That's who you are. You're a communal creature. Genesis 1 and 2 affirm that you need friends. And Genesis 1 and 2 tells us why. Because you were made for friendship. First and foremost, toward God, and secondarily, toward people. You were made for friendship. And we all know this, right? There's a reason why solitary confinement is punishment. There's a reason. Right? In January, we have been stressing the importance of silence and solitude in our life. And yes and amen to that. Doses of silence and solitude are necessary in our frantic, hurried lives. So yes and amen. But at the same time, I would also want to affirm that solitude and sanity cannot coexist for long. If you're in solitude long enough, it begins to unravel us as human beings because it's withholding the very thing that we were made for. Now, we've used this illustration before, but I think it's so on the nose just to show us this. If you want a good illustration of this and you want to see it on a screen, just watch the movie Castaway, right? Chuck Nolan, he is stranded on a deserted island for 4 years, and he's so desperate to make a friend that he does. He makes a friend. You remember his name? Wilson, a volleyball, right? That's his friend on the island. Now, the next time someone asks for, they ask you that classic question of what is the 5 things you're going to take, if you were stranded on an island. Part of what that movie is showing us, one of the things that better be on that list of the 5 that you're going to be taking with you is a friend. Because you need friends. You were made for friendships. According to the scriptures, friendship is an essential ingredient to the good life, to the way that God has made you to live. Now, let's just stop here and pause. Do you see friendship that way? As essential to the good life? Not a luxury, but essential in your life. I think for most people, friendship is one of the most important but least thought about areas of our lives. When we think about our life, we often think like this. Well, life has necessities like I need to eat, I need water to drink, I need air to breathe. So life has its necessities. But when we think of friendship, we think of friendship as a luxury. I love the illustration, just imagining your life as a car. And what if friendship was less like leather interior in a car and more like oil for the engine of your car? What if friendships are more like that? What if life without friendships only takes us so far down the road until the car of our life begins to break down? That's how the scriptures see friendship. Oil for the engine, a necessity in your life. Now, here's part of my angst that I feel this morning talking about this with you, is I think most of us in this room are living on a starvation diet of friendship. A starvation diet. Now, let me balance this for a moment, because some of our younger brothers and sisters in the room, in that sort of demographic and in that crew, there has often been, in this cultural moment, an overemphasis on friendship that leads to all sorts of dysfunctional ways of relating to friends, like codependency and those sorts of things. So that does exist in our world, right? There is a tendency in that direction, an overemphasis. But I think in the vast majority of us, the problem is not an overemphasis, but an underemphasis. Or we could just say this: a total neglect of friendship. I think that's the primary problem. And one of the things I just want to say as clearly as I can to you today, Jesus came. He lived a perfect life. He died for your sin on a cross, and he busted out of a grave to give you a sacred gift, the gift of friendship. First with God, and secondly, with one another. The Bible sees this as a sacred gift given by the gospel to God's people. It is a gift. It's an essential gift. It's a gift that you need. We all need friends. So again, let's just pause for a moment and let me ask you the question. Do you have friends? Gospel friends? Are friendships flourishing in your life? Who are they? Who's the crew that you have in your life? Who are the friends that are deeply embedded into your life? They know you. Who are those people? Now, if you're married in the room and your response to me is, well, my spouse is my best friend. Yes and amen to that. I actually hope that's true for every married couple in the room, that your spouse is your best friend. But hear me. If your spouse is your only friend, you are not flourishing in friendships. You are friendship poor if that's true. You are neglecting friendship. You're on a starvation diet of friendship if that's true. So how are your friendships doing? Are you flourishing in gospel friendship? We need friends. We need them. We need friends. But what is a friend? Let me give you the 3 ingredients that when you combine these 3 things together, you get a gospel friend. You're in fellowship with a person. Here are the 3 ingredients that make up a gospel friendship. 1 is commonality. Commonality. And again, we've addressed this already. This is embedded in that word fellowship. It's the idea of sharing or holding in common. What are we holding in common? Well, not just common hobbies together. I love hobbies, and I think hobbies can be a way to cultivate some friendships, but gospel friends don't just hold some hobbies together. No, they hold the man and the mission together, right? That's the common thing that they are sharing. And by the way, this is one of the things I love so much about the church. If you look around this room, it's amazing how diverse this room is in age, right? In sort of financial status, in ethnicity, and just, it's a diverse room all across in every way you could kind of slice it. It's a diverse room. And I love it because then it makes you ask the question, what in the world could get a group like this together in one place, in fellowship together? What could do that? Answer, only something as big as the gospel of Jesus Christ can do that. That's the answer. That's what gets this whole team right here together in gospel friendship. And if you take gospel out of friendship, so if we remove that from what we're holding in common, if we take the gospel out of friendship, well, then we have something less than fellowship. If we take the gospel out of friendship, we don't have gospel friendship anymore, right? We have lost that. So this is the thing that we're sharing and holding in common, commonality. We have the man and the mission together, the good news of Jesus. So commonality is one ingredient. Second ingredient is constancy. A friend is faithful, loyal, trustworthy, present in your life. There is constancy. Now, think about siblings for a moment. When you think about a sibling, you don't choose siblings. Siblings are chosen for you, right? That's how it works if you've got a brother or sister, right, that you're living with. So they're chosen for you. But a friend is different. A friend chooses to push their loyalty and their love towards you. Or as Proverbs 17:17 says, a friend loves at all times, in good times, in bad times, in average times, in the worst of times, in the best of times. A friend loves at all times. And if you live long enough in this beautiful but broken world, you're going to experience all of those seasons. And the present love of a friend helps you endure all of those seasons. Or we could say it this way. A gospel friend stays present in your life. There's constancy. A gospel friend stays present in your life in a way that keeps you from wrecking your life. That's a gospel friend. One of my favorite pictures of what a gospel friend is found in the book of Hebrews. It's Hebrews chapter 3, verses 12 and 13. And listen to this passage. Here is a gospel friend right here. Look at this picture. It says, "Take care, brothers, So that word brothers is saying that because of Jesus, the good news of Jesus, we are now in a family. There is a gospel friendship that is formed. We are in fellowship with one another because of this commonality of Jesus among us. So take care, brothers, lest there be in any of you an evil, unbelieving heart, leading you to fall away from the living God. But exhort one another every day, as long as it's called today, that none of you may be hardened by the deceitfulness of sin. The longer I live, the more simple my ambitions for life become. If I had to boil down the ambition of my life, here it is. I want to die one day, and when I do, I want to die loving Jesus. I want to die loving my bride, Laura, and I want to die loving Jesus' bride, the church. That's the ambition of my life. It's just real simple. I just want to die one day and all of those things to be true in my life. But this text shows us that there's some enemies of that ambition. There are some things working against that being true when I die one day. There are some things fighting against that ambition in my life. And this text names them. First, it says there's an evil that still remains in my heart. Right? That's still present in me. I have remaining sin in me. That evil is still in me. And because of that, my heart is prone to unbelief, this text says. Because of that, my heart is prone to hardness, just a coldness between me and the Lord. Because of that evil that still remains in me, I'm prone to believe the lies of sin, this text says. Now, what did God give us to fight against these enemies of that ambition? Of just dying one day, still loving Jesus. What does God give us to fight against those enemies that we see in this text? Answer: the constant encouragement of gospel friends. That's the grace, according to this text, that the Lord has given you to one day die loving Jesus. The constant encouragement of gospel friends. You see it there. But exhort one another every day. To exhort one another every day, you've got to be kind of a constant in their life. You have to be present in their life, but exhort one another every day. Now, why do we need people in our lives exhorting us? Why? That none of you may be hardened by the deceitfulness of sin. What is God's provision for you not to be hardened by the deceitfulness of sin? Well, look around this room. Just take a minute to look around. That is God's provision for you. Gospel friends. Friends who are in your life, who know you, who encourage you. In John Bunyan's classic, The Pilgrim's Progress, if you've read that, you know, Christian doesn't make it safely home with the Lord. He doesn't make it apart from friends in his life. If you have watched or read Lord of the Rings, you know Frodo does not make it to Mount Doom and drop the ring in and save Middle-earth. He does not make it apart from faithful friends like Sam, does he? He doesn't make it. And I want to look at you as clearly as I can and just say this to you. You will not make it safely home apart from gospel friends. Fellowship, gospel friendship. You will not make it apart from that. That is one of God's means of grace for you, to preserve you, to keep your heart geared toward Jesus, for you to die one day loving Jesus. You will not make it. I will not make it apart from gospel friendship. What are the ingredients of a friend? Commonality, constancy, and then thirdly, candor. Candor. There's a reason why Proverbs 27:6 says this: faithful are the wounds of a friend. That is paradoxical, isn't it? Faithful are the wounds of a friend. Profuse are the kisses of an enemy. I love metaphors like that because they make you think, right? So here's the metaphor. Here's the paradox. Faithful friends wound. On the other hand, enemies kiss. That is meant to make you think, like, what is going on there? That's not the way that I would expect to read a proverb like that. Now, what is this proverb showing us? Well, it's showing us what we need from friends and what friends need from us. And here's a way to say it: candor. Honesty, even when it hurts. That's what friends need. You need that from friends, and your friends need that from you. Now, why is that? Why do we need candor? Honesty, even when it hurts. Why do we need that? Well, here's one way to say it. Because we're all weird. We're all weird. Both by nature and by nurture, we're all weird. Just start by nature. Like, even if you have been redeemed by Jesus, sin still remains in your heart until Jesus comes back and takes us home. And you know what sin does to all of us? It makes us weird. We find weird compulsions in us, weird habits, weird tendencies, weird insecurities, weird fears. Sin just makes us weird. By nature, we're weird. And by nurture, we're weird. We all grew up in a family of origin. And it doesn't matter how great your family is or was, they just leave you a little bit weird, right? Even the best of our families have some dysfunction in them that just leaves some weirdness in us. And here's the worst part of our weirdness. When you live with the weird long enough, do you know what weird becomes? Normal. Normal. Isn't that scary to think about? That our weirds become normal to us? So God gifts us friends to make us less weird, to round us out, right? To make us more normal, to help us see our blind spots, to help us mature, to help us grow. God has gifted you friends to do all of that for you. This is why we need friendships that have candor in them. We need to be less weird. And when friends are honest with us, even when it hurts, it makes us less weird. So here's the ingredients of a friend: commonality, constancy, and candor. And we all need friends like that. You do. I do. We all do. So why do we see this habit develop in the early church of practicing fellowship, practicing gospel friendship? Well, here's one answer: because we need friends. All of us need friends. You will not make it without friends. But here's another way we could answer that question. Why do we see that habit develop? Because friends form. Why are they practicing gospel friendship? Because friends form. And because friends form, it means that we don't just need friends, we need the right friends, right? We need gospel friends in our life. It is amazing to look at your life and to see the deep and profound ways that your friends have formed you. The scriptures show us over and over again that we make friends, then our friends make us. That's how friendship works. We make friends, then our friends make us. So Paul says in 1 Corinthians 15:33, do not be deceived. Bad company ruins good character. We make friends, then our friends make us. And Solomon in Proverbs 13:20 says it this way: whoever walks with the wise becomes wise, but the companion of fools will suffer harm. That's his way of saying, we make friends, and then our friends make us. To know where you're headed in life right now, to know where your life is aimed, the direction of life, where you're going to end up in 5 years from now, all I need to do, I actually don't need to know you at all to know where you're headed, where you're going to be in 5 years from now. All I need to do to know where you're headed and where you're going to be in the future is to know your friends. Because we make friends, and our friends make us. Our friends have incredible forming power in our lives. If you have foolish friends, according to Proverbs 13:20, it's just a matter of time for any of us. If we have foolish friends, it's just a matter of time before we're an idiot too, right? That's just the way it works. But on the other hand, if we have wise friends, you know what starts to happen when we have wise friends? Their wisdom starts to rub off on us, and we grow in wisdom. That is the incredible forming power of friendships. We make friends, and then our friends make us. The old axiom is right. Over time, we become the average of our 5 closest friends. Now think about that in your life. Is that not amazing to think about? And it's true. You're going to become the average of your 5 closest friends. Think about your zeal for Jesus. You're just going to be the average of your 5 closest friends. Last night, we had a fire going in our house, and I was playing with the fire, and at one point, I just pulled an ember out of the fire, and it's amazing. You pull that ember out of the fire, how quickly that ember cools off. But you grab that same ember, and you put it right back in the middle of the fire with those other embers, and you know what instantly happens? That thing re-erupts. It reheats itself almost instantly. That is a picture of your zeal for Jesus. You pull yourself out of gospel friendships, community where people are zealous for Jesus, and it's amazing how quickly you cool off. You keep your life in among a group of friends, gospel friends that have a zeal for Jesus. It's amazing how much you heat up. You're going to be the average of your 5 closest friends, your zeal for Jesus. How about your zeal for evangelism or the mission of Jesus? If you want to grow in evangelism, I hope you do. Just an aching heart for those who are far from Jesus and who are perishing. Well, get your life around people who have an aching heart for those who are perishing, who consistently share Jesus with those who are lost and who are perishing. You know what you're going to find? Your zeal for mission and evangelism start to grow. Same is true for generosity. You're going to be the average of your 5 closest friends. Same is true for your love for your spouse if you're married. You're going to be the average of your 5 closest friends. It's amazing how quickly our marriages acclimate to the friendships around us. It's amazing. And if you want to have deep, rich, vibrant friendship in your marriage, get around strong marriages. You're going to be the average of your 5 closest friends. We could use that same principle when it talks about our speech or our words. You could use the same idea. You're going to be the average of your 5 closest friends when you think about your patience, your prayer life, your fill in the blank, right? We make friends, and then our friends make us. It really is amazing to think about the forming power of friendship in the Bible. What would have happened to Peter apart from the candor of Paul to look at him in Galatians and say, man, you are out of step with the gospel. You are out of step right now. What happens to Peter apart from a friend like that? What happens to Paul apart from the blessing of gospel friendships running the race of ministry with him? If you read the end of Colossians, it's amazing. Paul just starts listing these gospel brothers and sisters, these gospel friendships that he is in fellowship with, that he's running with. And Paul doesn't make it apart from those people that he's running with. Or how about our brother David in the Bible? What would have happened to David apart from the encouragement of Jonathan? David is walking through one of the most difficult seasons of his life, and his brother Jonathan goes, and the text says he strengthened the heart of David. But what happens apart from that in David's life? What happens to David apart from the candor of Nathan? Nathan was the friend that God used to bring David back from his wandering. What happens in David's life apart from a friend like that? And what will happen to your life in 5 years, 10 years, without gospel friends like that? Where will I be in 5 years? I just shudder to think about that. Where would I be in 5, 10 years from now, apart from gospel friendships in my life? Where would I be? Okay, I want to finish by offering some practical encouragement for you. What we see in the early church is a habit of fellowship, a habit of gospel friendship. Now, I would just encourage you this week to keep that in front of the Lord. What would it look like for me to grow in and develop that habit of gospel friendship, for me to practice gospel friendship? What would that look like? As you're setting aside, 10 minutes a day, 1 hour this week of silence and solitude, that would be a great question to bring before the Lord. What would this look like in my life to develop these things? But I want to give you 3 practical encouragements as we finish up today. Here's the first. What can you do to take a step toward gospel friendship? Number 1, you can pray for gospel friendship. Pray. Again, ask yourself the question, am I rich in gospel friendship? Who are they? Am I rich in friendship? If so, take a step back and just thank the Lord for that today. and just keep up the good work, right? I mean, just keep investing and cultivating those friendships. Keep up the good work. I remember a couple of years ago reading this book, and the author was talking about friendship, and he said, having a real friend is almost like having an extra life. I mean, this is one of God's most sacred gifts that he gives to his people, our deep, rich friendships, gospel friendships. So if that's you and you're rich in friendship, thank God for that and keep cultivating it. But if not, if you're not rich in friendship, ask the Lord for it. Ask the Lord to show you some friendships that you could begin to cultivate in your life. You need friends. You need it, so pray for it. And secondly, after you pray for it, pursue it. Pursue gospel friendships. If we are going to make friends, we have to give up on the passive approach to friendship. That has to die, like today, the passive approach to friendship. One of the defining moments of my life came when I was 20 years old. I just finished my freshman year of college, and I'd come back to my home church to intern for a summer. And during that summer, the Lord just grabbed my heart in some really deep and profound ways. And I ended that summer loving Jesus. I mean, I was in a completely different place. And I knew that as I headed back to OU for my sophomore year of college, that I was doomed without gospel friendship. I knew that I would not make it apart from gospel friendships. I was moving back to OU, and I was moving into a fraternity house with 70 other guys. I mean, what could go wrong, right? I was doomed apart from me getting some friendships figured out really fast. And so on the drive back, I just asked the Lord, who are those guys going to be? God, would you give me some of those guys when I get there? And so I pull into Norman, I pull up to the fraternity house, I park the car, and I walk straight into the room of Casey Maddox. I told him about what had happened to me, about the Lord's work in me that summer, and I looked at him and said, I need friends. I need friends. And in that moment, not taking the passive approach, but the proactive approach, here's what the Lord gifted me. He gifted me gospel friendships that I flourished in for the next 3 years. And, looking back, that's been about 20 years ago. Looking back, it's hard for me to even find words to express to you what those friendships meant in that season. I know this, I wouldn't be doing this today, standing in front of you in this moment, apart from those friendships in that season of my life. But the only way those friendships emerged was proactivity. We've got to let that passive approach to friendship die. If you take the passive approach to friendship, you will be friendship poor. Now, one way you can be proactive in your approach to friendship is by jumping into a group at Stonegate. And I just want to commend that to you, encourage you, nudge you in that direction. Can I tell you what a group is for? A group is meant to give you space to be formed by gospel friendship. That's what we're doing in groups, giving you space for those gospel friendships to form that will then form you, for you to make friends that will then make you. That's what they are for. So right now we have a bunch of mixed groups. We have a bunch of men's groups. We have a bunch of women's groups. We have a bunch of young adult groups. We've got all sorts of groups meeting around our church family. And in the next 3 or 4 weeks, we have 20 groups launching. Of both mixed groups, men's groups, women's groups, all of these groups are launching right now. So there is no reason that anyone who wants to take a proactive step toward friendship, there is no reason you can't begin to find gospel friendship in your life. So I want to commend that and encourage you to be proactive. Let that passive approach to friendship die. This is a great season in your life right now to take those steps in your life. So pray for it, pursue it, and then lastly, and we'll finish here, is to persist in gospel friendship. Persist. Friendship is not easy. By the way, this is why in Acts 2:42, they were devoted to it. Because it's hard, right? It's not easy. It's costly. It hurts sometimes. Can you just take a moment to look around this room? Just, again, look around and just see some of the faces in the room. Just look around. Because sin remains in every person in this room. The faces you're looking at are going to be some of the people that hurt you deeply. They're not going to meet all your expectations. You're going to find yourself in hard moments with them, in conflict with them. All sorts of hard things are going to emerge as you are in relationship with the people in this room, because sin still remains in you and it remains in them. But can you just take a look around the room one more time? Just look at some of the faces around. Just see the people that make up this fellowship, this church family. Because sin is not the only thing that remains in them. Jesus is alive in those people you just saw. The faces that were just in your sort of line of sight. Jesus lives in them. And you know who Jesus is going to use to keep your heart from hardening in the deceitfulness of sin? Do you know who that's going to be? It's the people that you just looked at. Jesus lives in them. He's going to use them to keep your heart. He's going to use them to keep your heart from hardening, closing to Him, believing the lives of sin. It's these very people in this room that when you find that your heart is just withering and it's dry, He's going to use the people in this room to breathe life into your heart. When you find that you are wandering from Jesus, you just walked away from Him, right? You just don't want anything to do with Him. Your heart is so cold toward Him. It's these people in this room that He's going to use because He lives in them to bring you back, to keep you safe. And when you walk through the valleys of deep darkness, and it's coming for every one of us in this room, your day's coming, my day's coming, and when we walk through the valleys of deep darkness, these are the people, those faces that you just saw are the people that God is going to fashion into His rod and His staff to comfort you. These are the people that He's going to use to walk you all the way home, to keep you safe until you arrive face to face with Jesus. 8 days ago, we honored the life of Nicole Rogers. About 3 years ago, she was diagnosed with ALS. And if you have seen that up close, you know the brutality of that road. And I got to sit right over there on that row 8 days ago, and I got to listen to friends stand up and tell the stories. I got to listen to friends stand up, sisters, gospel friends, sisters, talk about going over to her house and reading her the Bible when she couldn't read it. Sitting at the piano and playing songs and singing to her. Reading the Pilgrim's Progress to her. Speaking life and encouragement into her. It was a beautiful thing to behold, watching these sisters, these gospel friends, walk her all the way home to be with Jesus. So whatever you do, don't give up on friendship. Persist in it, because there is a day coming for you and for me, for every one of us in the room, where our life is going to depend on it. Will you bow with me there where you are? And I want to give you a moment to allow the Lord to press into you what would be most helpful. Are you flourishing in friendship? Who are those friends in your life? You know, and for any of us, if we want to grow into a better friend, here's the first thing it takes, is to know deeply the best of friends, Jesus. That's where it starts. And so for some of us, the step that the Lord's asking you to take today is that first initial step toward Jesus. When you push your life in with Him, when for the first time you turn from your sin and you throw your life upon the life, death, and resurrection of Jesus, you hold your life up to Him and say, God, I'm trusting Jesus, rescue me, save me. And Jesus, the best of friends, would love to bring you into friendship with Him. So if you have not done that, make this your day to know the best of friends. That's where all friendship starts. So Father, would you minister to us today? Father, would you make the gospel real to us today? Father, would you turn our church family into a beautiful place of gospel friendship? Oh God, would you do it? And it's in your good name that we ask it. Amen.